You know, for pretty much all of human history, we've looked up at the stars and wondered, is anybody else out there? But in just the last 50 years or so, we stopped just wondering and, well, we started shouting. We started sending messages out into the cosmic void. So today, let's take a look at what exactly we've been telling the universe about ourselves.
Just think about that for a second. It's a pretty tricky problem, right? You've got to find some common ground, use some kind of language they might understand, and figure out what you even want to say in the first place.
And there it is. That's the real challenge. All of a sudden, things like language and culture are out the window. The only thing you might have in common are the basic laws of physics. So, how did we, this young species on a tiny little rock, even begin to tackle this ultimate communication puzzle?
Well, our first real shot was way back in 1972 with the Pioneer 10 spacecraft. And bolted to its side was this, a golden plaque. You can think of it as our very first galactic message in a bottle.
The legendary Carl Sagan, who was one of the brains behind this whole thing, he just boiled its entire purpose down to that beautiful, simple mission. So how on earth did they try to answer those enormous questions on a tiny little metal plate?
The team figured, look, there's really only one language we could possibly share with an alien intelligence, and that's the language of the universe itself, science.
Okay, so what's really cool here is the foundation of the entire message. They started with hydrogen, right? It's the most common thing in the entire universe. And hydrogen atoms can emit a radio wave with a very specific wavelength, about 21 centimeters. This became their cosmic ruler, a universal unit of measurement that any advanced civilization should, in theory, be able to recognize.
And this is how they put that cosmic ruler to work, to answer where and when. This starburst pattern is basically a map. 14 of those lines point to pulsars. These are rapidly spinning stars that act like cosmic lighthouses, each with a unique pulse. The long binary numbers tell you their frequency. And since pulsars slow down at a predictable rate, any civilization that finds this could trace them back in time, triangulating not just our star system, but the exact moment this probe was launched. It's absolutely ingenious.
But here's the twist. For all that cleverness, we're only human. Our first draft to the cosmos, well, it wasn't exactly perfect.
Yeah, as it turns out, some of our key data points had some, let's call them inaccuracies. On the Pioneer plaque, the human figures were drawn a little out of scale. Then we learned that our pulsar map wasn't perfect because pulsars aren't the perfect cosmic clocks we thought they were. But the biggest whoopsie came in a later radio message where our count of human DNA base pairs was off by over 1 billion. So yeah, writing a perfect message is definitely harder than it looks.
Okay, so 5 years after Pioneer, our approach really evolved. This time, we didn't just want to send a map. We wanted to send our soul. The Voyager Golden Record was designed to show not just how we think, but how we feel.
So that was the challenge. The record was made for audio, for sound. How in the world do you store over 100 photographs on a disc that's basically just a big vinyl groove?
The solution was just beautiful in its simplicity. They turned pictures into sound. They scanned each image, pixel by pixel, and mapped the shades of gray to different audio frequencies. A black pixel was a low tone, a white pixel was a high tone. The end result was this burst of noise that, if you knew how to decode it, would reconstruct the picture. They essentially turned a photograph into a screeching sound file. Brilliant.
And the content was so much richer this time around. I mean, beyond images of science and human life, there were greetings in 58 different languages, the sounds of whales and thunderstorms, and 90 minutes of music, everything from Bach to Chuck Berry. This was our planetary mixtape.
After those really carefully put together NASA missions in the 70s, things got, well, a little chaotic. Interstellar messaging went from being this thing for elite scientists to something that, really, anyone with a radio telescope and maybe a sponsor could do.
And what a list it is. We went from carefully crafted scientific diagrams to messages crowdsourced from manga readers. We sent greetings from thousands of paying customers, and yes, we sent a literal 30-second commercial for Doritos into deep space. We even beamed tens of thousands of short text messages out there. Our cosmic conversation suddenly got a whole lot noisier and, you could argue, a whole lot weirder.
All of this activity eventually led people to ask a pretty fundamental question. We've been so focused on how to talk to aliens, but did we ever really stop to ask if we should?
This has basically split the scientific community right down the middle into two camps.
On one side, you've got METI, that's Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Their argument is, hey, the galaxy is silent, so somebody's got to be brave and break the ice. But on the other side is SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And they believe we should be the galaxy's quiet observers, listening very, very carefully before we ever shout into the dark.
This quote from Nobel laureate George Wald just perfectly captures the fear behind that SETI argument. What if the civilization that hears us isn't friendly? What if we're basically just squirrels shouting our location to a hungry wolf?
And this isn't just some philosophical hand-wringing. People have actually tried to quantify the risk. The San Marino scale, for example, rated one of our most powerful radio messages, the Arecibo message, an 8 out of 10. They called it a potential far-reaching threat to humanity. That is a pretty sobering thought.
And what's really fascinating, just to show how complex this debate is that even Carl Sagan, the man who started it all with the Pioneer plaque, he eventually changed his mind. He later argued that humanity, with what he called our backward status, should probably just listen and learn for a while before trying to join the galactic conversation.
So after all this, where does that leave us? We've sent our most profound equations, our most beautiful music, and ads for snack chips. It's a chaotic, contradictory, and deeply, deeply human collection. And maybe the most important question isn't whether aliens will ever hear these messages, but what this cosmic scrapbook really reveals about humanity itself.